Okay, so we're going to start out by checking out a new lesson that comes from Econ EdLink on interest, on compound interest. And teaching compound interest is one of the central things in teaching personal finance, and there's a bunch of ways to do it. So I'm going to alert you to a new lesson plan that's on Econ EdLink, and I'm also going to give you some materials that I made that I just used to use in my classroom that I'm going to use it on that as well. So we're also going to do readers theater on the subprime mortgage crisis that happened just over 10 years ago. Some of you might have done that with me before. I figured that it's a good thing to do on with this format to get us all involved so that we can all have our lines in a skit. But also that's just a perfect way to connect personal finance, investing, and the economy as well, and to learn about how the Fed gets involved in the economy. We're going to end the session by doing a lesson on new tools of the Federal Reserve. In case you all didn't know, the Fed no longer buys and sells bonds to affect the money supply. And yet all our lesson plans still say that, and that's because of changes in the economy since the Great Recession. So Great Recession might seem ancient history now. In economic terms, it's not. So that's all going to have implications for how people how people manage their finances in a post-COVID-19 world. So let's get started. So I'm going to have to share my screen here with you. Hold on just a moment. Hold on just a moment. Okay, so here you see my email. And I don't know about you, but I get my regular emails from Econ EdLink. And if you're signed up in Econ EdLink, not only do you get their helpful emails, but you also are able to save and annotate lesson plans in your personal account there. And you're able to, well, yeah, like I said, annotate lessons. And you're able to save quiz results in Econ EdLink as well. And the signing up is free, so I definitely recommend that you do that. In the back to school edition of Econ EdLink, I got this list of helpful new and updated lesson plans. And these ones caught my eye down here. The benefits of investing early and compound interest. So I'm going to click benefits of investing early. It's going to take me to Econ EdLink, where you can find tons and tons of lessons on economics and personal finance. And by the way, they've updated their format. So if you are already used to doing Econ EdLink, but you haven't been there in a while, make sure you go back. They have all these tags now for easily navigating your standards, going straight to assessments for the lesson, extensions, and they'll have resources that you can click down here too, including a lot of interactive Web 2.0 resources as well. So make sure you go to that. This particular lesson, it actually has the students calculating the compound interest. But I'm going to actually skip that part for now. I don't want you all to do that. But it has the slides you can use, as you can see here, which you can just download very easily. I'll open those. And then I'm going to take you over to the supplementary material that I made for it. So you have your slides right there. Benefits of investing early. Person A and person B are the same age. One person saves $24,000 for retirement, one saves $72,000, but they have the same rate of return. How is that possible? Well, that's what this lesson is going to show us. It has a couple little inquiry questions there. So also this question here, who will have more money at the age of 65? Now, I'm going to take you to a version of this that I actually made, because they have this right here to answer the questions, which I recommend that you use, but I still like my version better. So I'm going to go over here to have people calling in who probably are trying to get into the webinar, but I cannot admit them. They can see the recorded version. Okay, so can you all see this slide that says time is on your side? Okay, I see some heads nodding. All right. Actually, I'm going to back out of that view. Okay, so this is kind of funny because it says RBC Bank up in the corner. I actually made this lesson plan while I was a high school teacher. For RBC Bank, I did some contract work for them, and then RBC got bought out, and so they're no longer a bank in the US, except there's a little version that caters to Canadians. So this is my personal stuff, but it has a bank logo on it. I haven't found how to get rid of that yet, but by the way, all the materials I'm going to share with you, including this PowerPoint and everything. So question for you or for your students, which would you rather have, $100,000 in cash or the magic penny? Here's what the magic penny does. You get 1 cent and it doubles every day for 30 days. Which would you rather have? You all are muted, but well, let me see if anybody told me in the chat room. Kimberly says the penny. Ashley says the penny. Ben says the penny. You can't trick any of you because you are teachers of personal finance. But your students might say the $100,000, but let's look at how the penny multiplies. So at the end of on day one, you'd have a penny. Day two, you'd have 2 cents, 4 cents, 8 cents, 16, 32, 64, 128, et cetera, et cetera. And that's $1.28 inside of a week. That doesn't seem like very much. But if you go over here to the slide, look at that. You're 1 week in, you've only got $1.28. By the end of 2 weeks, you're at $81. By the end of 3 weeks, you're at 10,000. By day 30, you're at 5 million. And if you have a 31-day month, you're at $10 million. And this really will make the students' eyes bug out. And I especially like to point out to them how at the end of 10 days, it doesn't seem like you're getting anywhere at all. So with compound interest, it's really towards the end of the function that it really tails up and becomes a lot of money. There's another way to do this, and that's the question of vampires. I don't know how knowledgeable you are at vampirology, but how does let me just ask the group, can anybody tell me how do vampires procreate? How does a vampire create another vampire?
Got a bite.
Yeah, you bite somebody, right? Now there's dispute among vampirologists whether you actually have to bite the person entirely to death and kill them, like in Bram Stoker's original Dracula, or if you can just bite them once and they immediately turn into a vampire. Let's say that a vampire has to eat one person, has to bite one person every month, and that person turns into a vampire. Here's what you're going to get. The question of, do vampires exist? At the end of 1 month, that vampire will create an additional vampire, and that person will create another one, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that we're going to prove through this slide that vampires do not exist, because just like the magic penny, the number of vampires would expand so quickly that, as you can see right here, at the end of 34 weeks, the entire Earth's population would be vampires. And as we're not, we can say that vampires don't exist, unless maybe you're the last one who's not a vampire. You don't know. Everyone on this Zoom meeting could be coming for you soon.
The master vampire.
What's that?
The master vampire.
Yes, yes. But if you're the last one bitten, then you're the vampire on the bottom rung. So, but again, at the beginning, 2, 4, 6, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. At the end of a week and a half, there's not that many vampires. And just like the magic penny, it starts to become a bit more impressive at the end of 2 weeks. 3 weeks, oh my goodness, there's a lot of vampires. And by the time you're at week 34, the whole population of the world are vampires. So that's the power of compound interest. And of course, we want to apply this to people's retirement. Will you travel the world when you retire? I had a macroeconomics professor who used to say, if you save when you're young, you will travel the world when you retire. If you don't, you will sit at home eating cans of tuna and watching Judge Judy. So that was his threat to us, and I would occasionally threaten my students with that as well. So saving for retirement, it's the same thing. We go to this worksheet that comes along with the lesson. I have so many windows open. Here we go. Can you all see this worksheet coming in? So let's say that we have two people, Jason and Sarah. Look at their savings schedule. Jason graduates from college and he immediately starts saving. He's able to save $3,000 a year, which he puts in mutual funds, index funds in the stock market. And he's only able to save for 7 years. By the time he turns 30, he gets married, he starts having kids, he's got a lot of financial pressures, but he doesn't touch that money that he's got sitting in his mutual funds. And so he saves for 7 years till age 30 and just lets it sit. Sarah, on the other hand, she graduates college and she goes on trips. She pays off her student loans. She has a little fun. But when she turns 31, she says, you know what? I need to get serious. And she starts saving her $3,000 a year. Notice that if you take these people's lives, continue going down, 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 by the time they get to retirement age, both of them have about the same amount of money. Right? So that shows the power of compounding here, that just saving for a few years and then stopping is equal to starting late and saving a really long time. Of course, if you save entirely from age 23 to 65, you'd have a lot more than this amount of money because of compounding. So let me ask you a few questions. I'm not going to ask you these because we have to calculate them. But you can have the students calculate how much they actually contributed off of it. For Sarah, I think it's tens of thousands of dollars. For Jason, it's just over 10,000. But what are some things that might have prevented Sarah from building or saving when she was young? You can tell me right now.
Student loans.
Student loans. Ashley says having fun and spending.
Didn't get a job.
Oh, didn't get a job, yeah.
Might be a lot of credit card expenses.
Credit card expenses, rent. Yeah, Bland says she always struggles with the rate of return. Let's talk about that for a moment, actually. When I first did this activity, when I first saw something like it, we used to give a rate of return of 10%. And then after the financial crisis, and as we enter a world of lower economic growth, a lot of people pointed out that was unrealistic. So sometimes you'll see this, you'll see these forecasts with a rate of return maybe like 5%, 6%. I've done 8 here, and I think that's okay. I can say that personally, I started investing when I was 23 years old, when I was right out of college. And I'm 40 now, and my rate of return over 17 years has been more than 10%. That includes the Great Recession, right? So that includes going through the worst economic crisis of our lifetimes. So 8, I think, is realistic if you're talking about they're invested in mutual funds, in stocks, and they're not trying to beat the market. They're just letting their investments grow along with the market. You can recommend that they be more conservative with their estimates, and that's okay. Bland says dollar cost averaging helps too. Yeah, which means you just put the same amount of money like Jason and Sarah in your account every single month, no matter what. You just leave it there. You forget about it. Any more questions about this? I'm sure you have all seen this before. Most of you have seen this before, but nobody should go into teaching without it. So I'll just give you a reminder. If you look for Econ Ed Link compound interest calculator. It's one of the more fun ones on the internet because it's animated. Oh no, they've blocked my Flash player. Rats. Let me see if I can unblock it right quick here. Are they gonna let me do it? Okay. So we're starting at age 23, 8% interest. We're gonna save $150 a month. Hit calculate. The students love this because you get to watch the interest outpacing the principal as it goes. Look at that. That would be Jason there. I made him save a bit more. And as you can see at $622,000, pretty good. And I always point out to my students, look how much money he actually had to give up. He had to save, the principal. That's how much he had to set aside. This gray area, the interest, is the amount of money that other suckers paid him for the privilege of borrowing his money, right? Students usually get pretty excited about that, but I point out students, don't be the sucker, right? If you get into debt early and stay into debt, you're the one paying all that interest over that entire lifetime to somebody else who's saving that tiny little bit. Notice that if you start at age 30, you can punch that in here, save the exact same amount, but wait 7 years to do it. Number's not nearly as high, is it? So that saving early, that really taking advantage of compounding makes a big, big difference. Okay, let's go on to another activity, okay? We're gonna go on to the subprime crisis readers theater before we go on to money and monetary policy. Has anybody ever done, I'm actually a little curious because when I was planning this, I was making sure I didn't make too much old stuff. Has anybody here ever done this, this little skit with me? The Who Messed Up skit. Bland has, let me see my entire, can't see anybody else. We have a no from Janice, no from Kimberly. Bland says yes. I think, Greg, did we do it when you were here with your institute? Okay, well, good. You always try to balance sharing your best stuff along with making sure that you don't retread things. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do this. Okay, so this is about the subprime mortgage crisis that kicked off the Great Recession. I really like this lesson because it does so many standards at once. Role of financial, from the SOLs, role of financial markets and institutions, government's role, contracts of implications of contracts, consumer rights and responsibilities, types of financial institutions, how financial institutions affect personal financial planning. That's kind of difficult to teach sometimes, but I think, again, this skit shows you the impact of all of those. Historical events influencing the banking system, knowledge of credit and loan functions, investing in the effects of government actions. So that's why we do this. It teaches a lot of things that are otherwise difficult to teach. Okay. So I'm going to give you all a part in the skit, okay? We're not going to go over those answers yet. And we're going to go through this Reader's Theater skit, and you're going to read these things out loud, and we're going to learn a ton of stuff while we go, all right? I need to go over here to my list of people who are in this workshop so I can assign you your parts. Alrighty, I'm just going to go through this. Would please write down to yourself right quick the part that I give you. Okay, everybody ready? Everybody ready? Okay. Actually, darn, I need to make sure I know who's actually on the call instead of just those who are on my list. I'm gonna move that off to the side for now. I don't know, but you all need to see it. Learning how to teach using Zoom. That's what we're all getting used to. Okay. Okay, Bland, can you be Connie the Congresswoman, please? Okay, can we have Diana and Sayantani? Did I say her name right, Sayantani? Close. Diana and Sayantani. Oh, thank you.
Pronounced it right.
Oh, I did?
Thanks for doing that.
Good for me. Okay. Diana and Sayantani, you get to be Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac right here, okay? And you all say the same lines at the same time, so it doesn't matter who is who. Okay. Greg, would you please be Jurgen the Norwegian villager? Is that okay? Okay, Janice, would you please be Al, the Federal Reserve Chairman? That, of course, is Alan Greenspan. Kimberly Akers, would you be Herbert the home buyer? Got that? Takesha, would you be Mort the mortgage broker? Ichabod, the investment banker. Ichabod kind of needs to be somebody who can kind of act like a jerk. Ashley, would you be our jerk? Ashley Mott? Ichabod, the investor? I can't see you. I'm getting, Ashley says sure. Okay. Okay, Lamont, would you be Spencer the speculator? And Regina, would you be Rashid? Oh, I'm sorry. Would you be Bertha the banker? Regina as Bertha the banker. Lamont, Regina, I'm going to assume you can hear me, though you're muted and I can't see you. Can we get Harold as Rashid the raider? It's a big part. Sam Robinson as Andy the accountant. And Debbie, would you please be Isabel the investor? Okay, Taniko, are you there? This is the starring role, Felicia the financier. Can you be Felicia? And then, oh no, are we out of people? We're out of roles. We're gonna have to start back at the beginning. Is there anybody that I forgot? Oh, I'm sorry. Would you be Felicia's sidekick then?
Sure.
Okay. We're gonna have to go back to the beginning then. Bland, would you also be Marty McFly? And Greg, would you please be Doc Brown? Those are both rather small parts. And then Diana and Sayantani, would you be Playwright 1 and Playwright 2?
Okay.
And then I will be the exciting narrator. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay, let's get started with this skit then, all right? I'm gonna blow this up just a bit so you can read it. Can everybody read that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So by the way, when we change, when I do this with my students, whenever we go from time travel from back in the day to 1990s, we go diddle-oo, diddle-oo. So I'll do that. Just don't be weirded out if I say diddle-oo, okay? So Marty McFly and Doc Brown, are you all ready? Okay, and action.
Hey, Doc, I'd like to buy a $100,000 house, but I only have $10,000. Is there something you can do to help a little guy like me achieve my dream of home ownership?
Great Scott! Are you serious? You've got to have at least 20% of the value of the house as a down payment. Get your act together and earn some money, kid.
Diddle-oo, diddle-oo, diddle-oo. Fast forward.
Good people, I urge you to re-elect me. I promise in return that all Americans shall own houses. How can this be, you ask? First, home mortgages shall be tax-free. Next, we shall require banks to give loans to people who may not have good credit. Lastly, I decree that any mortgage a bank sells to a low-income buyer will be purchased by our government-sponsored entities, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Fannie, Freddie.
Yes, boss.
Yes, boss.
You're the two biggest investment houses in the world. If you set out to encourage home ownership, everyone will have to follow suit if they wish to compete. And hey, don't feel bad if you make a lot of money in the process, okay?
Okay, boss.
Okay, boss.
And I'll make sure that there's plenty of money available in the economy so loans are easy to obtain. Just keep it flowing.
Gee, I sure would like to buy a house, but I don't have any money, and I don't think I can afford the payments. Can you help me?
Sure. Since the value of your house will always go up, we don't need down payments anymore. You can just borrow the money and use the house as collateral.
Hey, can you call Buddy? Buddy?
Herbert says, sweet.
Sweet. Sorry, I can't get off mute fast enough.
I don't even really want a house, but I need a good investment opportunity. Can you help me?
Sure. A great investment would be a new house. Since prices always go up, how many would you like to build?
Do I have to live in them?
Nope. Just wait till the price inevitably goes up, then sell them.
Sweet. I'll take 3.
What do you, by the way, take a pause. What assumption do you see going through everybody here that might cause some concern for the future?
That's a large investment.
What's everybody assuming?
That housing prices will go up.
Price inevitably goes up.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. Regina says her audio won't let her talk. What part were you, Regina? I can take over your part if you can't do it. Okay. Oh, Bertha. I think Bertha's part is over. So that's fine. Okay. Later at the, oh wait, Bertha, I'll be Bertha since your microphone won't go. Okay, so first we take a new mortgage file, and what I would do with this is I would get a present, and I would get a bunch of papers rated F, F minus. These things show the oh boy, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I would get a picture of garbage, and I would say that these are these mortgages are trash because all these people have borrowed money to buy houses, but they don't really have a means or an interest in paying it back. So there's some visual aids here, and those are listed in the lesson plan. Okay. Bertha, whew, I better hide these stinky loans while I wait for their value to go up, and quickly, before our investors figure out that they're here and sell their stocks. I know, I'll sell them to a really smart finance guy in New York and let them work their magic. Felicia and Sidekick.
Oh, sidekick or front answer?
Finance.
Okay. Woo! These mortgages are terrible. I'll never be able to get them off the bank's balance sheet if I don't do something amazing.
But who would want to buy these risky loans?
I've got it. I'll just make a new corporation that doesn't do anything at all but buy risky mortgages. That way, no one will know that banks actually own them. Then I'll wrap all the mortgages together into big bundles called CDOs.
I don't get it. Junk is junk. That just means there's even more bad debt in one place.
And by the way, that's where you have all the junk gets thrown into a nice present that you can pass around the room, gift wrapped. A bunch of junk in a nice looking present. That's what the CDO were. You may continue.
Let's see.
No
way. No way. Only 7% or so of the risky loans won't get paid back. After all, that's what history has shown us. And history has also shown us that housing prices will always go up and away.
I'm starting to get it.
I'm not finished. Next, I'll sell little bits of this big bundle to people and pay them as the mortgages are paid off. That way, we can turn a mild-mannered home loan into an exciting and dynamic investment. Now off to the Feel Good Ratings Agency to clean them up even more.
So basically what they have found out here is how to take a mortgage, which is a 30-year long investment, and chop it up into a really fast-moving, easily tradable little bits of investment. And this had never been done before. And it took a sleepy, boring part of the market and turned it into an exciting and fast-moving part. And at the same time was made so complex that people that bought and sold these securities didn't really hardly even know what they were made out of. And little did they know that they were made out of a lot of loans that were at their very bottom, not any good, extremely unlikely to be paid back. Okay, Rashid the Raider. Who is our Rashid? We lost our Rashid the Raider.
You want me to do it?
Sure, yes. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, Harold says his microphone isn't working. Who just volunteered?
I did.
Okay, go for it.
Hi there, Felicia. You looking for AAA today?
Thanks, Rashid. How are you?
Having a AAA day, thanks. What can I do for you?
How? Take a look at these securities I've bundled together and give them a AAA rating.
Look at these securities. Risky, but there's so many of them that they can't all fail. But still, I don't think I can give them our highest rating, even though housing prices always go up.
What about if we buy an insurance policy that guarantees the earnings?
Perfect. This package deserves a AAA rating.
Have a AAA day.
Sidekick.
You just turn a pile of worthless loans into a reputable, safe AAA investment that isn't even on the bank's balance sheet. Now we can sell these to anyone. Investment banks, school boards in Kansas, small Norwegian towns, pension funds, anyone who's looking for a safe investment. You're a genius. Felicia the financier, tell me something I don't know. Hey, who wants a AAA investment?
Everyone.
Me.
Hey, Jurgen, I just bought this great security bond from a smart guy in New York that I think would be great to make money for your villagers' retirement fund. It's a AAA rated. What do you say?
Yeah.
Who is our Isabel?
No, Isabel.
Sir, as an investor and a concerned citizen, I demand that you force our financial institutions to show greater transparency and openness in their reporting.
Who is our Andy? Well, we can just have everybody say this. Everybody on the call, on the count of three, we'll say, "Be gone from my sight." Okay, 1, 2, 3. Be gone
from my sight.
Okay. Oh, I'm the exciting narrator. Freeze! Okay, playwrights.
Hold up, this play is getting boring. This seems like a good spot for a plot twist.
Yeah, something unpredictable, something no person involved in home buying could ever have foreseen. But what?
Hey, I might have an idea. No, wait. Yeah, no, yes, I have got it. We could have housing prices go down.
I love it. It's bold, it's daring, it's earth-shattering. Who would have ever imagined a price bubble to pop? Okay, let's see how it shakes down.
You need to go out?
Okay, Jurgen and Ichabod, you're going to bring us home.
I can't do a Norwegian voice for Heyman. Hey, man, what's going on? We're not getting our monthly payments.
Yeah, I meant to call you about that. But it's been around here. It seems that no one else is paying back their mortgages, so the CDOs they made out of them are pretty much worthless. They messed up.
Junk.
Junk, but they had a AAA rating. Why did the rating agencies give them such good ratings?
They messed up.
But aren't they backed by insurance policy?
Are you serious? No insurance companies have enough to pay these kinds of losses back. They messed up too.
But what about the CDO corporation owners? They should be shut down.
Yeah, right. No one ever knows who those guys are, but whoever they are, I'm sure they messed up.
Congress?
Has been known to mess up from time to time.
Well, the Federal Reserve could have raised interest rates to stop easy borrowing, right? Let me guess, they messed up?
Spot on, her Jurgy. Jurgy.
What about you? Why did you sell me the stuff? You told me housing prices always go up.
Well, yeah, I guess they don't. We messed up.
So what am I supposed to tell my villagers who want to retire?
Tell them you messed up.
Well, I guess we all learned our lesson, didn't we?
Whatever, I guess. My company got bailed out anyways. Oops, I got another call coming in. Gotta run. Good luck with your Nigerian villagers.
And that's the end. Give yourselves a round of applause. Okay, here's the moral of the story. Oh, we're all supposed to say this together, but it's hard over Zoom. If an investment looks too good to be true, it probably is.
Probably.
The end. I won't play you the whole video right now, but a really, really good video to back this up is you can look for the subprime crisis visualized, the credit crisis visualized. Yeah, and this is on Vimeo, and this is a really classic video that's perfect, and it teaches a lot of the things that the skit does, but in a video format. I won't burden you with it at the moment, but definitely, well, I'll show the beginning of it. What the heck?
The crisis of credit, visualized. What is the credit crisis?
Can you hear okay?
It's a worldwide financial fiasco involving terms you've probably heard, like subprime mortgages, collateralized debt obligations, frozen credit markets, and credit default swaps. Who's affected? Everyone. How did it happen? Here's how. The credit crisis brings two groups of people together, homeowners and investors. Homeowners represent their mortgages, and investors represent their money. These mortgages represent houses, and this money represents large institutions like pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign funds, mutual funds, etc. These groups are brought together through the financial system, a bunch of banks and brokers commonly known as Wall Street. Though it may not seem like it, these banks on Wall Street are closely connected to these houses on Main Street. To understand how, let's start at the beginning. Years ago, the investors are sitting on their pile of money, looking for a good investment to turn into more money. Traditionally, they go to the U.S. Federal Reserve, where they buy treasury bills, believed to be the safest investment. But in the wake of the dot-com bust and September 11th, Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan lowers interest rates to only 1% to keep the economy strong. 1% is a very low return on investment, so the investors say, no thanks. On the flip side, this means banks on Wall Street can borrow from the Fed for only 1%. Add to that general surpluses from Japan bonds. Not surprisingly, the homeowners
And this is sort of where things turn south, and then I'll pause it.
default on their mortgage, which at this moment is owned by the banker. This means he forecloses and one of his monthly payments turns into a house. No big deal. He puts it up for sale. But more and more of his monthly payments turn into houses. Now there are so many houses for sale on the market, creating more supply than there is demand, and housing prices aren't rising anymore. In fact, they plummet. This creates an interesting problem for homeowners still paying their mortgages. As all the houses in their neighborhood go up for sale, the value of their house goes down, and they start to wonder why they're paying back their $300,000 mortgage when the house is now worth only $90,000. They decide that it doesn't make sense to continue paying, even though they can afford to, and they walk away from their house. Default rates sweep the country and prices plummet. Now the investment banker is basically holding a box full of worthless houses. He calls up his buddy, the investor, to sell his CDO, but the investor isn't stupid and says, no thanks. He knows that the stream of money isn't even a dribble anymore. The banker tries to sell to everyone, but nobody wants to buy his bond. He's freaking out because he borrowed millions, sometimes billions of dollars to buy this bond, and he can't pay it back. Whatever he tries, he can't get rid of it. But he's not the only one. The investors have already bought thousands of these bonds. The lender calls up trying to sell his mortgage, but the banker won't buy it, and the broker is out of work. The whole financial system is frozen, and things get dark.
All right, pausing it there. Anyway, just try to give you a taste. It's a perfect video again for teaching all the stuff that we demonstrated in this skit right here, which is also a built-in lesson plan, which I will email to everybody who signed up for this session. Do we have any questions about all that right now? We're still living in the wake of the Great Recession. It still is, the fallout from it is still affecting our world to a great degree. Okay, don't see any questions coming through. That's okay. Okay, well, let's go through a little bit then on money, what it is, how it works, and how the Federal Reserve has changed their monetary policy, their tools for monetary policy just in the last few years. And then I'll just point out a couple more resources that you'll really need to know going into teaching your EPF class, and then we will be done, all right? Okay, so some basics about money. And again, all PowerPoints and lessons I'm going to share with you. Okay, so money has three functions, and this is for a review for those of you who already teach this and already know it. But there's these ways that I've chosen to discuss it everybody doesn't do, so I think it's worth doing. Money does three things. Why do we need money? Money is good for storing value. If you don't have money, then you're at the mercy of then hoping the things that you create have a storage value. If you're a teacher, they don't, right? And when you're a teacher, whenever you teach, it's just you're always creating new value at every minute, but you can't store that up for the future. And also say that you're a farmer. If you're trying to save up for retirement, you couldn't just save your lettuce that you're farming for years and years and years. Money allows you to actually store your value up for the future. It allows you to measure value, right? In fact, anthropologists tell us that this was the original reason why money was created, for the collection of taxes, so that a regime that wanted to collect taxes from people would go to them and say, you owe me this amount in money, instead of going to farmers and saying, you owe me 3 cows. But, you know, what if they decided to give you bad cows or sick cows or skinny cows or whatever? Measuring value, it allows us to communicate what something is worth. And then maybe the most important of all is how to trade value as a medium of exchange. That means that one person has one thing, another person has another thing. Maybe they don't want the same thing, so they wouldn't be able to trade if there was no medium of exchange. But money allows people to make trades even though they might not want what each other has. When you go to Kroger, the people who work at Kroger don't want you to teach them about economics and personal finance, right? Can you imagine going through the line at the store with your cart and you saying, you know what, I don't have any money for you today, but I can explain to you how compound interest works. The lady at the register would be, what? But she will take your money. So those are our functions of money. Money has to have certain characteristics. It needs to be portable. You need to be able to carry it around. It needs to be durable because you need to be able to store it. It needs to be scarce. And in controversies about money, the part that is usually controversial is the scarce part, because a central bank can make more money or can make less money. And really, they can create infinite money, because our money nowadays it's mostly not even currency. It's mostly just numbers in a computer. The vast majority of money that exists are just numbers in a computer, which means that if the Federal Reserve Bank, the central bank, wants to make more money, they can just go bloop, 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 type it in, and type in as many zeros as they want, therefore making money not scarce. So it's always a big question how much money the Fed should actually create. I saw something come through the chat. Hold on just a moment. Oh yeah, there's a shortage of coins nowadays. In that case, money is too scarce. Right now, with the coronavirus going on, we're unable to get coins. And so what that is, that's a pressure on our money as a, oh wait, what did I miss here? As a medium of exchange, right? If you want to trade something in nickels, dimes, quarters, it makes it difficult to make those exchanges if you don't have your coins. I haven't prepared a thing for talking about why the coin shortage is going on now, but that would be really interesting for your students in the world of coronavirus, and there's lots of articles available for it. So money is supposed to be scarce. And if money is not scarce, then it ceases to lose its value, right? I sometimes use this illustration. When I was in elementary school, I remember our teacher telling the whole class, each and every one of you is special to me. You're each my own special kid. And I remember sitting in the back of the classroom being like, well, if we're all special to her in general, then nobody's special in particular. Right? She did not have because every kid in her first grade class was special to her. It meant that specialness wasn't really that special anymore. She lacked her specialness was not scarce. And so it lost its value. And the same thing goes with money. If you just print money for everybody, then it's not scarce and it's not worthwhile anymore. That's called inflation, a general rising of prices because of a general increase in money. So the Federal Reserve System manages our money supply. And I'm not going to talk through this right now because that's the structure of the Fed. But we're now going to talk about how the Fed is different, how its tools are different since the Great Recession. So here's what our banking system looks like. Here's the Federal Reserve, our central bank, and these are banks here in the middle, and then this is the market over on the side. Now, here's what your textbooks and actually what the AP Econ test still says is that banks sometimes need money to loan to the marketplace. And so they don't always have enough money. And so they want to borrow from the Fed. And the Fed would buy and sell treasury bonds to banks. And that way the Fed would decide how much money was in the economy. When they bought bonds, they brought bonds in, they would put out money and there would be more money available to loan. And if they wanted to reduce the amount of money in the economy, they would sell bonds and they would give banks a good price for the bonds. They take money in and keep it out of the economy. And the amount of money in the economy is what determines interest rates. And so that's how the Fed raises and lowers interest rates. Remember in the news when it would say the Fed raised the interest rate, they weren't actually dictating an interest rate. What they were doing is buying and selling bonds. That was called open market operations. And here's the upshot. We don't do this anymore because in the wake of the Great Recession, that video and skit we were just doing, the Federal Reserve put so much money into the economy so much money into financial institutions to keep them solvent, that these financial institutions, these banks, are awash with cash, flush with cash. Now, I'm sure that you all remember, of course your students won't, but it was really controversial at the time that the federal government was handing out so much money to financial institutions, to Wall Street. Interestingly, now in the coronavirus recession, they're actually giving money directly to households, aren't they? But they didn't do that in the Great Recession. They gave it to financial institutions, made people mad, started the Tea Party movement, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going into that. The point is that they gave a lot of money to banks so that banks would loan it out, and the banks didn't loan it out because interest rates are so low. And so banks are sitting on mountains and mountains of cash, and that presents a problem for the Fed in conducting monetary policy. And it's this: if the banks, I'm sorry, I saw a chat thing again. And here's the problem: if you're trying to buy, if banks have so much money, they have as much of it as they need, they're not going to need to come borrow it from the Fed, right? And so how is the Fed going to conduct monetary policy? Fed has been buying a lot of bonds lately. Yeah, Bland, thank you. If the Fed is trying to affect the monetary policy, banks don't want to buy and don't need any money from the Fed because the banks have all the money that they need. It's what's called excess reserves. Excess reserves. The money that the Fed gave the banks back in the Great Recession is still sitting in their virtual vaults, because there's no actual vault, but sitting in their accounts online. And so when the banks need to lend money to the market, they don't get it from the Fed, they just get it from their vault. So how does the Fed influence monetary policy in this world of ample reserves or excess reserves? Here's what they do. They pay banks to keep their money on account at the Fed. Let me repeat that. The Federal Reserve pays banks interest on reserves for banks to keep their money at the Fed. So the money is no longer sitting in the bank's virtual vault. The money is now at the Fed. And the Fed gives the banks a good interest rate to keep their money there. So what this means is that the Fed again now has control over the money supply, because they're not leaving it up to the banks to decide when they loan out the money. Instead, they give the banks a good incentive to keep their money with them, and that's how they control the interest rates now. Another way to put this is that they're not affecting the supply of money. Now they're affecting the demand of money, especially the demand for money at banks. So the Fed raises or lowers the interest on reserves, and then once the bank what happens is, in this next bit, the banks will lend money to markets. Now, the banks have more money to loan if interest on reserves is low, and have less money to loan if interest on reserves is high. What that means is that the banks have to say this: look, we can either make money by loaning our money to the market or by saving it with the Fed. Which one are we going to do? If the Fed gives us a high interest on reserves, we're going to keep the money at the Fed and not at the market. But if the Fed is not going to give us a high interest on reserves, then we're not going to keep it at the Fed, we're going to loan it to the market. And so that's how the money supply for the whole economy is determined. Interest on reserves. The upshot is that the Fed again can affect short-term interest rates. The Fed again has the power to affect short-term interest rates. So I've made a little bit more of an explanation here. If you need it explained again, go to this website recently put out by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. I'll click on that. In fact, I have that pulled up over here. I'll show it to you. I have it on one of my many windows that's open. Here we go. So how does the Fed influence rates using its new tools? I don't necessarily recommend that you give this as a reading to your students. It's a bit technical. It shows the supply and demand curve for money. But it gives you an explanation for how things changed since the financial crisis 2007. It tells you what their new tools are, interest on reserves. And imagine teaching this to your student. Overnight reverse repurchase agreement rate. You don't need to teach it to them. But basically what that means is that some banks are too small to participate in interest on reserves. And so the Fed basically pays them to buy and sell bonds. That's what the overnight reverse repurchase agreement is. You're econ teachers, so you should know what this is, even if you don't teach it directly to your students. But this article gives you a helpful little table down here at the bottom to show what the things are, their definitions, etc. So you'll have this in the PowerPoint when I mail it to you. Got another chat here. Okay. Any questions about that? Any questions about the Fed's new tools, interest on reserves, anything like that? Okay, I want to give you a few minutes then to practice using this tool, the Econ Lowdown, which is what everybody should be using in an online environment. Is there any, would you raise your hand or say something in the chat if you already use Econ Lowdown?
Yes, I use it already. I've used it for this during the pandemic.
Okay, I have 2 people say they use it. Lamont says yes. Okay. I have 3 yeses. Okay, 4. I'm actually curious to know how many people have, because that'll kind of determine how much time I give you to play with it. If a lot of people use it, we'll just use a little. Anybody else?
I've used it.
I'm sorry?
I've used it. It's
okay.
Especially for synchronous.
For synchronous?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, good. I haven't used it for synchronous. I thought it was asynchronous. Anybody who has not used it?
You can definitely use it for both, but it depends on how you want to control it.
Okay, so I'll link you to I met the guy who does them, Scott Walla. Scott and
I have a picture. I always show my kids the picture. So, yep, this is a real guy.
He and I were in, we did our master's degree together at the University of Delaware. In fact, I called him yesterday to say, hey, Scott, what link should I send the people for this? And actually, I shouldn't share my screen while I go straight through my email, but let me find you the link. Okay. Okay, so here's the link. And I'm going to share it with you all, okay? And actually, if you look in the chat, I'll share it in the chat. So everybody go over to the chat. So let's spend just about 5 minutes. Would everybody please go work on that, the monetary policy module on economic lowdown. So I'll share again for a moment and then I'll stop sharing. But if you go over to this, This is the link that means that you don't actually need to be to have set up a course with students in order to do it. But go to a lesson, and we should talk about MV versus NPQ just a little bit to make sure everybody knows it. But I'll give you about only a really short amount of time, about 4 minutes to explore this, especially since some of you all have already used it, but might use a refresher. Then we'll talk briefly about MVPQ, and I'll show you a couple resources, then we'll be done, okay? So let's spend about 4 minutes just doing some practice here on this module of Econ Lowdown, the link for which is in the chat. We'll take about another minute. Okay, any actually, I won't take questions about MVPQ, but I will talk about it for a moment. If you all notice, oh no, I've lost my. So if you all see this this equation, MV equals PQ, sometimes it can be a little, you know, it's not obvious what it's good for. Fast forward to here, it's a good illustration of it.
Q represent all the milk and cookies.
So they say here, P versus Q represents the price of everything in the economy times the quantity of it.
And P would represent the price, like is the prices of all the.
So the PQ is prices times quantity of things in the economy. That represents the real economy. M is the amount of money in the economy, and then the velocity. And the velocity actually really matters right now, because one question that I get from people a lot, and here's one that you should all be ready to answer, is if the Federal Reserve keeps interest rates so low and keeps creating so much money, why do we not have high inflation? It's a real question on a lot of people's minds, because interest rates have been very low. Fed has been very loose with monetary policy for years now. Why don't we have a high inflation rate? Inflation is around 1%. It's been less than 2% for years and years now since the Great Recession. So why is that? Especially as the Fed continues to create money. So one answer to that, a simplified answer, is that the M is increasing, but V is decreasing. The Fed gives money to banks, and the banks don't lend it out. It stays in the bank. And so that's why we don't have inflation, because you can increase the M. The Fed says, okay, we're increasing M, which should increase P, prices, which would be inflation. But instead what happens is that as Fed increases M, the V decreases, and that keeps things level. So we have stable prices. We don't have inflation. So why is that? Well, I'll show you one reason that I think is important for economics teachers to know. And it has to do with this graph right here. These are interest rates. This line is the 10-year Treasury rate. That's the loaning, that's the federal government of the US loaning money for 10 years. And the 1-year rate as well. Can somebody tell me, what is the general trend that you see in this graph?
Interest rate, especially the 10-year and the Fed funds rate, have been dropping almost to zero.
Right, they go down, 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 right? But notice the 10-year Treasury rate, this line right here, it goes down, down, down. Federal Reserve does not affect that rate. Fed only affects short-term rates. What this means is that markets think that 10 years from now, interest rates are still going to be really low. What that means is that the Fed might not be creating the low interest rate. The Fed might be responding to the low interest rate. So when Fed increases money supply, when the Fed decreases interest rates, it might be just that the Fed has no other choice. If they raise them higher, then they'd be not doing what the market says. If you look at other countries' interest rates, their interest rates have all for long term have all gone down, 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 down as well. So I think that's an important thing to understand what our worldwide economy is like right now. We have low growth, low productivity growth, low inflation growth, low interest rates. It means that banks don't have a lot of incentive to lend out a ton of money. Velocity goes down. It means that there's not a lot of really good places to invest money to get a very high return. It means you can't count on a lot of wage growth. You can't count on a lot of economic growth. We're in a world where you got to learn to save your money, where if you get a salary, your salary is going to be pretty similar 20 years from now to what it is when you get hired. In fact, there's economic research that shows pretty much the only way that people get significant increases to their salary nowadays is by changing jobs, by getting a new job. Bland says, what happens if rates turn negative? That would be unprecedented. I mean, that would be the Fed literally giving people free money, like, we'll pay you to take our money. I don't see that happening. Not that it couldn't really happen, but you're kind of in a different world at that point. Students need to be ready, and we need to be ready to live in this low growth world. When I started teaching in 2002, I could count on a raise, a real raise every year, right? And you kind of looked up that, you just see your salary go over time. Nowadays, people's raises pretty much just keep up with inflation, right? You don't get many real raises. And so in this world, the Fed might not be able to raise interest rates much. The Fed might just be having to keep easy monetary policy just to adjust to the reality of worldwide low interest rates determined by the market. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? MV equals PQ means the V is low. Banks don't want to lend money. And if they don't lend money, you don't get a lot of inflation. The Fed can put more money into the economy, but the banks say we're not going to do anything with it. All right. If there's no questions about that, feel free to cut in any time with a question. I'm going to just wrap up by showing you a couple resources that you might already know about, but this is especially for the new teachers. I want to make sure that you don't start out this year not knowing the key resource sites. Did somebody have a question? I thought I heard a noise.
Yeah, one of the kind of interesting phenomena, if you will, is the difference between mortgage rates for new mortgages versus refis. The spread is very wide relative to where it's been in the past. Mm-hmm. Of course, someone brought this to my attention this morning. I said, well, my first mortgage was 15.5%. So it's all in perspective. But I thought that was a really interesting, in the 10-year is what mortgage rates are based off of. So
yeah. Yeah. Long rates are low as well as short rates. That's the evidence that the low rates are market-based and not just Fed-based. Okay, so everybody should, I've already showed you Econ Lowdown, but make sure you're using it. I'm going to go ahead and share again. I'm just going to show you a couple resources that you may or may not all be aware of. So Google Econ Lowdown. It's made by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, my good friend Scott Walla. And it's perfect for when you have to do a lot of distance teaching. They have quizzes, you can sign up a class, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, just going to the Federal Reserve Education page, if you go federalreserveeducation.org, that's where they have their, this searches all of the member banks' materials. So just go to Federal Reserve Education and search there. It is actually worth going to the individual member banks and looking at what they have. So for instance, if you go to just say Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, click on education, they'll have their own page of good stuff. So it really is worth going to the individual member banks stuff. For instance, Atlanta will send you free posters if you ask them. So click through each one. I've pointed out EconEdLink already. I highly recommend that you not only go to EconEdLink, but you also sign up, create that account, and that way you can have those extra access features that I mentioned to you earlier. While we're here, the Financial Literacy and Economic Education Conference was supposed to be in Virginia, in Chantilly this year, but it has been coronavirused out. But you can still go to it online, and I highly recommend you do. Notice that it's less than $100 to register, and it's an online conference this year. I'll be presenting at it. You can see that in the VCU Center for EconEd's webpage. I'll be presenting in partnership with some other teachers, but it's a great way to get the very best economics teaching material from all over the world. We have economics and personal financial educators from all over the world who attend this, so I highly recommend that you go to this. But while you're at EconEdLink, they always have new collections of lessons They're updating lessons all the time. They have some print materials like high school economics have their online features here, and you can go down and get your oh, it's not in you can get all your slides, your assessments, etc., etc. So many things that you can just get for free and easy download right here. So if you know Econ EdLink already and haven't been to it for a while, make sure that you go back again. They also have new topics. If you go to browse collections by topic, they now have Invest in Girls. You can get them to come do a workshop with you. Culturally responsive teaching, and then basics of saving, unemployment, game-based learning and economics using Minecraft and things like that. The new Financial Fitness for Life, which I can come do a workshop with that and your staff if you need to. Math in the Real World, behavioral economics, election economics. It's always good to have, always good to do as we hit election season to make relevant lessons through that, et cetera, et cetera. Investing in a college education and economics of sports. The kids love that one. So make sure you visit Econ EdLink if you haven't done that in a while. Also, if you haven't visited in a while, Marginal Revolution University, they've been making a ton of new materials lately. And MRU is originally supposed to be about creating economics videos. And they have more than 800 videos now, but they've also been making lesson plans as well. So if you go up here to teaching resources, high school resources, they've started to make some really pretty clever curricula. I really like this one, Globalization, Robots, and You. And it's a really good lesson that's based on inquiry learning to connect to student, basically help students connect with relevant lessons in the economy. So it has videos, it has a lesson plan, it has a culminating project, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely check out Marginal Revolution University if you haven't looked at it in a little bit. And that's all I've got for you today.